You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Hi. Hello. It's Josh Bow. Only Josh Bow. It's Pod Maverick after dark. Mavericks just lost to the Milwaukee Bucks 137-107. It's just me tonight. Kirk Henderson needed to be away. He is actually driving back to Texas right now, but he needed to go visit some family. And so it's just going to be me. I would have offered to have someone else from the staff of MavsMoneyball.com come join me tonight, but I literally think only one other person on our site's staff watched the game. So it's just me. And I think we try to get these things to go to 20 minutes. That's usually like our goal, just a little inside peek behind the curtain inside baseball. I don't know if I'm going to be talking to you guys for 20 minutes because I don't really have all that much to say. The game is what it is. The Mavericks had everyone out. Obviously Kyrie Irving news still fresh in everyone's minds. You know, if you've been reading the site, we've already posted about it. I wrote a column for D Magazine that published this morning. But we haven't, if you're just a podcast listener, this is our first podcast since we got the news because when me and Kirk recorded Monday night, as far as we knew it was serious and we worried that it might have been that. But, we didn't know it was an ACL until following morning. So, Kyrie's got a torn ACL. He's out for the season, going to be out for probably the first half of the next season. The Mavericks had only 8 players available tonight, which is the minimum the NBA requires for a team to play in a game. And that's what it looked like. They're missing 5 of their best 6 players. Their starting lineup was Max Christie, Klay Thompson, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dwight Powell, and Najee Marshall. And then the other 3 players available were Olivier Maxence Prosper, Kessler Edwards, and Brandon Williams. Surprisingly, they actually shot the ball okay. Mavericks made 13 3-pointers, shot 33% from 3, 46% from the floor, only had 10 turnovers, but they played 0 defense because they were missing all of they were literally missing their 4 best defenders in Gafford, Anthony Davis, Lively, and PJ Washington. So the Bucks kind of did whatever they wanted. It helped that the Bucks pretty much made all of their threes I don't know how much I want to talk about the rest of the game. I mean, there's nothing else to talk about the game. I mean, the thing is the Mavericks season is over, regardless of if Anthony Davis actually does come back. And there's not even the only real development to watch is like Max Christie, like Omax Prosper is just kind of a guy, and then Kessler Edwards and Brandon Williams are two-way guys. They're not going to be on the team next year. Jaden Hardy's hurt, so Dwight Powell, Spencer Dinwiddie, Klay Thompson, Najee. You kind of know who those guys are. There's not so. The only thing you watch for when a team season is kind of over like this is when they give young guys some burn, and you look at development and stuff like that. And the Mavericks don't have that because they built a NBA championship roster. That's why they don't have that many developmental pieces on it. They didn't need it. They decided to throw that all the way, apparently, under their own volition. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think the shock of the Irving injury, everyone's kind of reacting to it. The Irving injury news kind of feels like the Luka, not necessarily the same way, but it kind of feels like the Luka trade all over again in terms of like the impact, the emotional reaction. Because while Kyrie was still healthy, there was a chance, if Anthony Davis returned in the next week or so, and then Lively and then Gafford would come back following, maybe, they can win the play-in and get to the 8th or the 7th seed. And then in the first round, see what happens. But now all of that stuff, that's over with. The season's pretty much dead in terms of competitiveness for the playoffs. So it kind of felt like a second morning. I know people weren't over the Luka trade to begin with, and now they're really not going to be, now it's like really relitigating it all over again. I'm genuinely concerned about what's going to happen to the fan base. I'm genuinely concerned about what's going to happen to the people that have part of their livelihoods riding on the performance of the Mavericks. I'm thinking about, I'm going to be honest, no one we have a Slack channel, a Slack for Mavs Moneyball for all our staffers to communicate, discuss, shoot the shit, plan for the site, and also our podcast. We have a thread specifically for actual games, watching along, we're talking during games, and no one talked in it. No one watched the game. I think only Gracie, who did our recap for Mavs Moneyball, and me were the only ones that watched the game. And I'm sounds silly, but I don't even know if are we gonna have a website in 12 months from now? In March 2026, Mavs Moneyball still exists. Our podcast will still exist because there's contractual obligations. So we will be here through March of 2026 at the very bare minimum. Is our podcast going to make it? I know this is kind of crazy to think about, but no one cares. No one cares. No one cares about the team right now, and I can't blame them. Why would you watch? Why would you watch? There's no reason to watch. Like I said, there's not even developmental pieces to kind of sink your teeth into. I don't know what's going to happen this summer to reinvigorate the fan base, to try to garner interest. Maybe they do try to pull off a Kevin Durant trade. I don't know. But with Kyrie not going to be ready, the earliest I think he would be ready is Christmas, maybe January 1st. And that's being optimistic considering he's a soon to be 33-year-old with prior surgeries to the same knee. So I don't know if it's going to be the swiftest recovery, but who knows? He's a tremendous player and athlete. Wouldn't shock me if he came back earlier than expected, but he's not going to come back. He's still going to miss October, November, probably most of December, even if he comes back relatively quickly. So it almost feels like next season's kind of toast too, because they don't have anyone to pick up the slack, because Anthony Davis is more of a play finisher than a play starter. They don't really have any elite play starters right now. So I'm just concerned, no one, if no one's watching, then you're probably not listening to podcasts, and you're probably not reading articles on websites, and that makes what we do a tricky proposition. So yeah, I know I'm getting existential here, and I know I'm talking about stuff that doesn't even really matter. Like, who cares about like our podcast and our website? We like that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. But I like, what am I going to talk about? I'm not going to. No disrespect to the players that suited up for the Mavericks, but this game just did not matter. It mattered to them, of course. They played hard. They played harder than expected. They were keeping it relatively close for about halfway through the first quarter, and then got their doors blown off, which is to be expected. It's not their fault. But there's just nothing to talk about. There's nothing to take away from this game. And I know I've gotten, people don't want to talk about the other stuff, but there's nothing else to talk about. I don't know. I just don't know where they go from here. I was thinking a lot today after reading, after my column published on D Magazine. Tyler from As Moneyball wrote a similarly not heated, but well rationed emotional reaction to the Kyrie news as well. Check that out on MazMoneyball.com. But I was thinking, like, about the trade and Kyrie's injury is, it's funny. Like, obviously trading Luka, 25 years old, you're destroying your future, even if you somehow won an NBA title this season or the next or the season after that. Like, you've put a definite timeline on your roster, a hard stop, if you will, with Kyrie and Anthony Davis being your two best players, and they're both being over the age of 30. So you've put a limitation on how far this thing could go. Because with Luka, presumably he's going to be first team, second team, third team, an all NBA caliber player for the next 7 years or so. That'll be age 32 season. I think that's not that unreasonable to expect. That's 7 more years versus what, 2 or 3 that they've got now. So there's that part of it. But like, Quentin Grimes was also pretty young too, and they traded him. And it's just crazy to think, like, it'd be one thing if this team was like old, like it'd be one thing if this was like the 2012 Mavericks who are old, or even the 2011 Mavericks, which it was still a disaster to shake up that title team. But that team also had kind of peaked, right? The 2011 Mavericks, presumably. Obviously, you would run it back because you owe it to your community to run it back. Like, that goes beyond the basketball part of it, really. But that team had peaked and was old and didn't have, they had a short fuse as well. Like, the Mavericks were not only the reigning Western Conference champions, they were young and sustainable. Luka's 25, Derek Lively's 20, Daniel Gafford's 26, PJ Washington's 26. Quentin Grimes, I think, was what, 24? Those are all rotation players before the Luka trade, before the trade deadline. And it's like, not only were they good, they had a group that they could keep together and stay good for 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, obviously 7 years, PJ and Gafford are probably, they're getting into their mid 30s, but Luka's around his early 30s. Grimes is early 30s. Lively would be like 28. It's crazy. Like, that's another crazy part of it. Like, before the Luka trade, like, this was not only a contender this season, but they were set up for the next decade. So, it's not like they pulled the plug on a team that already didn't have much of a future. Like, they not only pulled the plug on a team with a present, but they pulled the plug on a team with a future. And it's bizarre to think about when you think about it like that. It's not like the Mavericks were 5 games under 500 when Luka was traded. It's not like they lost in the first round a season ago. They made the NBA Finals. They beat the Thunder and the Timberwolves, 2 of their direct competitors, and within like the same timeline in terms of their core age. And then the Lakers with LeBron and the Denver with Jokic, like, those 2 teams were aging out a little bit, and your primary competitors would be OKC, San Antonio, and Minnesota, presumably over the next, in Memphis and Houston. But you were better than those teams, and you were young. Like, you weren't maybe as young as Houston. You're maybe not as young as OKC, maybe not as young as San Antonio, but you're still pretty damn young. You're not that far behind. Like, this wasn't an old team that went to the finals a year ago, even with and then even adding Klay Thompson, like this wasn't an old team. So that's a part I've been racking my head around is not only did they destroy the present, they destroyed the future in a bizarre way. And make no mistake, I pointed that out in my column. Do not let the Mavericks gaslight you into thinking that this season just fell out of the sky. They decided to trade Luka for an injury-prone, older all-star in Anthony Davis. They decided to give the brunt of offensive creation responsibilities to a soon-to-be 33-year-old Kyrie Irving, who has had 2 surgeries in his left knee already and has had trouble staying on the floor consistently outside of off-court issues. His health, he has had health issues dating back to his time at Duke. They decided to put all their chips on those 2 players, and while the extra burden and minutes load on Kyrie is not directly responsible for his ACL injury, when you make Kyrie your primary guy and you rely on him to this degree, you are setting yourself up for a situation like this. Not necessarily, obviously, they're on the worst end of the spectrum with the ACL tear, but you're opening yourself up to ankle sprains, knee injuries, back injuries, etc. When you put all, well, if you had Luka, even if they had Luka and everything else played out the same, Daniel Gafford's hurt, Lively's hurt, PJ's hurt, Kyrie tears his ACL, your chips aren't all in that basket. You still have Luka, and maybe this season is lost, but you still have next season, and the season after that, and the season after that, and the season after that. It's the benefit of having a 25-year-old MVP candidate is if you have a shitty bad luck year, you can re-rack because he's now going to be 26, which is still very young. He's still not even in the absolute prime of his career. When you put all of your eggs into the basket of 2 injury-prone 30-year-old all-stars, Hall of Fame caliber players, admittedly, you don't have the luxury of, it's okay, we can go next. Like, this is a team that with a self-admitted 3 to 4 year title window that just threw away one of those years. So you open yourself, the margin of error is slim when you decide to go from from what they had to what they have now. So yeah, it's crazy. We're going to be talking about this for a while, hopefully, if people want to tune in and watch. But yeah, that's just kind of that's the only thing I thought. I thought about that today. And then during the game, I thought about how this thing is cooked in terms of apathy, fan apathy. Like, no one cares. We're still getting some decent traffic on articles because people are still like angry. But when that anger goes away, and it will, unless there's a huge Kevin Durant type trade this summer, which would, I think, respark some interest and save them, but it would again be doubling down on that short-term window. You're only putting off the inevitable. Outside of something like that, I just don't see it. They're already losing Mavs TV subscribers. People are canceling their season ticket packages for next season. Anecdotally, the people I'm talking to are just like, I'm not watching anymore. And like, to be honest, if I didn't have to do this, I would not be watching. Absolutely not. I'm someone who, since 2001 or so, if there was a Mavericks game on, I did everything in my power to watch it. So that's about 20-ish, 23, 24 years that and this was even before, obviously I wasn't doing media when I was a 12-year-old. That's 24 years of me looking at my schedule and being like, I'm watching the Mavs. Like, that's what I'm doing. Like, I don't care what else is going on. I'm watching the Mavs. Or I'm going to make room in my schedule to watch the Mavs. And if I can't, I'm going to come home and watch it on TiVo before I go to bed. TiVo, I just outed myself big time with my age there. Or I'm going to watch it the next day. And I've now reached the point that I would not watch. I kind of wish I couldn't watch. I kind of wish that, actually. Like, I would love to not be able to watch. I would love to be able to spend my evening different way. And right now, hang out with my family or watch a movie or play video games or read or literally do anything else than what I'm doing right now. Great podcast material. here, but just I don't know what else to talk about. I don't feel the same way. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. How not alone I am in that feeling is yet to be decided. We'll see the fallout. We'll see how the arena looks for the remaining home games. We'll see what it looks like going into next season when Kyrie will not be available on opening night. All think most likely scenario. If he is back before opening night, that would be outlandish, but we'll see. And yeah, I don't know what we're going to talk about for the next 19 games. I really don't. If you're someone, I had an interaction with a fan online who was like, I love you guys' work, but I am tired of talking about the Luka trade. I'm tired of talking about the negativity. I want to talk about moving on and moving forward and all that stuff. And I understand it. If that's how you feel, I would take a break from most Mavericks content. I would take a break from our content because I earnestly don't know what we're going to be talking about for the next 19 games unless something crazy happens and they go on a winning streak. If things go as expected and they lose these games, there's nothing else really to talk about other than everything else that's going on outside of what's happening on the basketball floor. So we'll do our best to talk about the basketball, but the basketball's bad and irrelevant. It's bad. So we'll do our best. I can't believe I made it 20 minutes. Holy shit. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I am going to call it a night. I'm not doing a live show. Kirk will be back, I think sometime this week, and we will get him back on the show. I think he has some more extended thoughts because he hasn't been able to give his thoughts on our platform since the Kyrie injury. So I'm sure he will share that. So for Pod Maverick After Dark, this is Josh Bowe. Read MavsMoneyball.com for our post-game coverage. Read our reactions to the Kyrie Irving fallout. I've got my column on D Magazine if you want to check that out. That's talking about the ramifications of the Kyrie injury and basically how this thing is absolutely fucked. And yeah, we'll talk to you again later. If you're sticking with us, can't thank you enough. Really can't thank you enough if you're gonna stick through with us. You guys are true sickos, and I appreciate it. So that's it for me, Josh Bowe, Pod Maverick After Dark. You guys stay safe, take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you next time.